The transmission came on a Tuesday morning in early spring. It cut through every radio signal, every television broadcast, every phone call on Earth at exactly the same moment. People stopped in the middle of their conversations. Drivers pulled over to the side of roads. Children in classrooms fell silent as their teachers stared at screens that had suddenly changed. The being that appeared was not human. It had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on a face that resembled a praying mantis. Its body was covered in dark green plates that clicked softly when it moved. Behind it, a chamber of impossible size stretched into darkness, filled with shadows that suggested other beings watching from the edges. Ambassador Zethric of the Voreth hegemony spoke in a language that no human had ever heard. But the words appeared as subtitles at the bottom of every screen, translated by technology far beyond anything Earth possessed. Species 7291. Designated human, the alien began. You have been observed for 3 of your centuries. Your early radio signals reached our listening posts long ago. We have watched your wars. We have cataloged your diseases. We have measured your technology and found it wanting. In Washington, D.C., Admiral Catherine Cole stood in the Pentagon's underground war room, surrounded by generals and intelligence officers who looked as shocked as she felt. She was 53 years old, had served in the Navy for 30 years, and had thought she had seen everything. She was wrong. Your application for junior membership in the Galaxy Council has been reviewed, Zethric continued. It has been denied. Your technology is primitive. Your lifespans are laughably short. Your homeworld is a backwater in an unremarkable arm of an average spiral galaxy. You are, in simple terms, not ready. Catherine felt anger rising in her chest. She had read the application that Earth's governments had transmitted into space 5 years ago, a hopeful message seeking contact with other intelligent life. They had received no response until now. However, the alien said, and something in his tone changed, became almost amused, the Council is not without mercy. We offer you a challenge. A dare, if you prefer that word. Complete the trials of ascension, and we shall reconsider your application. The screen behind Zethric lit up with images. The first showed a region of space that looked wrong, a place where stars simply stopped existing and darkness ate everything. The null zone, Zethric explained. A region where no engine has ever functioned. Cross it. The second image showed a star that was not a star. It was a spinning sphere of pure white, surrounded by rings of deadly radiation. The neutron star in the Keldari system. Retrieve a fragment from its surface. The third image showed a planet orbiting impossibly close to what could only be a black hole. Massive structures covered its surface, and thousands of ships filled the space around it. Dominion Prime, seat of the Galaxy Council. Present yourselves before us. Complete these tasks, Zethric said, and humanity will be welcomed as a junior member of galactic civilization. Fail, and your system will be designated a protected wildlife reserve. Your species will be forbidden from leaving your planet for the next 10,000 of your years. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in across billions of human minds. You have one of your Earth years. The Council eagerly awaits your surrender. The transmission ended. Every screen on Earth returned to normal. But nothing was normal anymore. In the Pentagon war room, someone whispered, "We're not alone." Admiral Cole turned to face her colleagues. Their faces showed fear, confusion, disbelief. She understood. She felt all of those things too. But beneath them, she felt something else. Something that had driven humanity across oceans and continents, through plagues and wars, to the moon and beyond. She felt determination. "Get me the president," she ordered. "And find me every scientist who has ever worked on propulsion, radiation shielding, or faster-than-light theory. We're going to need them all." Within 6 hours, world leaders had set aside conflicts that had lasted generations. The United Earth Response Committee was formed before sunset, bringing together scientists, engineers, military officers, and diplomats from every nation. Resources that had been hoarded were shared. Secrets that had been guarded were revealed. Dr. Samuel Wright, diplomat, who had spent his career studying the possibility of alien contact, was appointed to lead the diplomatic preparation. He was a quiet man with gentle eyes and a mind like a steel trap. He watched the recording of Zethric's message 17 times before speaking. "They don't expect us to succeed," he said to Admiral Cole during their first meeting. The way he spoke, the timing, the challenge itself. "This is designed to humiliate us. To prove that we don't belong, and we'll prove them wrong," Catherine replied. "How? We don't have faster than light travel. We don't have the technology to survive a neutron star's radiation. We don't even know where the null zone is. We'll figure it out. That's what humans do." Samuel studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "I suppose it is." In a small apartment in Chicago, a young physicist named Daniel Perry watched the news coverage with growing excitement. He was 28 years old, brilliant but overlooked, working on theories that his professors called impossible. He had spent years studying the nature of space-time, proposing ideas that had earned him ridicule at academic conferences. Now, looking at the image of the null zone, he realized something. The region looked exactly like what his theories predicted would happen if space itself was somehow removed from the equation. Not bent, or warped, or compressed, but simply absent. His impossible theory might be exactly what humanity needed. He found his phone and searched for the emergency contact number that every news station was displaying. His hands were shaking as he dialed. "I think I can help," he said when someone finally answered. "I know it sounds crazy, but I have a theory. It's about how to travel through regions where normal physics doesn't work." The person on the other end took his information and thanked him politely. Daniel hung up, unsure if anyone would call back. 3 hours later, a black car arrived at his apartment. 2 men in suits knocked on his door and told him to pack a bag. He was being taken to a facility called Prometheus Station, an orbital platform that was being converted into humanity's base of operations for the impossible mission ahead. As the car drove him to a private airfield, Daniel looked up at the night sky. Somewhere out there, alien beings were waiting for humanity to fail. They had issued their dare, confident in their superiority. They had no idea what they had started. Across the world, similar scenes were playing out. Engineers who had dreamed of building starships were pulled from retirement. Pilots who had pushed the boundaries of what aircraft could do received classified orders. Scientists who had proposed radical theories found themselves suddenly in demand. Humanity was answering the call. The Galaxy Council had given them a year to do the impossible. Admiral Catherine Cole intended to use every second of it. 3 months had passed since the alien broadcast changed everything. Prometheus Station, which had once been a simple research platform orbiting Earth, had grown into something extraordinary. Ships from every nation docked at its expanding framework. Cargo shuttles arrived daily with supplies and equipment. The station never slept. Daniel Perry stood at the center of the main laboratory, surrounded by screens displaying equations that would have seemed like magic a year ago. He had not been home since arriving at the station. He barely remembered what home looked like anymore. All that mattered was the work. His theory, which he had named Fold Transit, was no longer just words on paper. It was becoming real. "Explain it to me again, Admiral," Catherine Cole said, standing beside him, with her arms crossed. She visited the lab every day, demanding updates, pushing the team harder. Daniel had been terrified of her at first. Now he respected her more than anyone he had ever met. "Normal engines push against space," Daniel said, using his hands to demonstrate. "They create force that moves a ship from one point to another. But in the null zone, there's nothing to push against. Space itself is absent. So conventional propulsion fails completely." Picked up a piece of paper and folded it so that 2 corners touched. Fold Transit doesn't push through space. It folds space itself, connecting to points directly. The ship steps through the fold and emerges at the destination. The null zone becomes irrelevant because we're never actually traveling through it. Catherine studied the folded paper. "And you can build this? Given enough time and resources?" "Yes, I believe so." "How much time?" 6 months to build a working prototype. Then testing, refinement, scaling up to a ship-sized version. He hesitated. We're cutting it very close to the deadline. Then work faster, Catherine said. It was not a threat. It was a statement of fact. Humanity's future depended on them working faster. Daniel nodded and turned back to his equations. Meanwhile, Dr. Samuel Wright was conducting diplomacy of a different kind. Through careful monitoring of space, Earth's scientists had detected faint signals from various directions. Most were incomprehensible, clearly meant for alien receivers. But one signal was different. It repeated in patterns that seemed designed to be understood. The signal came from a species called the Mendari. And after weeks of airful communication, Samuel had established a fragile connection with one of their representatives. The being called itself Soft Current, a name that sounded strange in English, but apparently made sense in the Mendari language. You have done something unexpected, Soft Current transmitted during one of their conversations. The Mendari communicated through something like telepathy, converted to radio waves. The translation software struggled to keep up. The Council did not believe humans would even attempt the trials. They expected you to accept your fate quietly. Why would they expect that? Samuel asked. Because that is what most species do. The trials are not designed to be passed. They are designed to humiliate, to break the spirit of younger species and justify keeping them contained. The Vorath created them 50,000 years ago, and no species has completed them since. Samuel felt a chill run down his spine. No species? In 50,000 years? None. Many have tried. All have failed. The null zone alone has killed thousands of ships and millions of beings. The neutron star has claimed even more. And those who somehow survive both challenges have never reached Dominion Prime. The journey is simply too far. Oh, but it's possible. The trials can be completed. There was a long pause before Soft Current responded. In theory, yes. The trials follow strict rules. If you complete them exactly as stated, the Council must honor the agreement. But the Voreth made the rules knowing they were impossible to follow. Then why tell us this? Samuel asked. Why help us at all? Because the Mendari remember what it was like to be young. We remember being told we did not matter. We remember the Vorath looking down at us with contempt. Another pause. And because we have watched your species, you are different. You do not accept defeat easily. Perhaps you will find a way where others have failed. Samuel recorded every conversation and shared them with Admiral Cole. The information was valuable, but also disturbing. They were not just facing difficult challenges. They were facing a rigged game. Designed by ancient beings who had mastered the art of crushing hope, Catherine read the transcripts in silence, then looked up at Samuel with fire in her eyes. Rigged games can be won, she said. You just have to be smart enough to figure out the rules they didn't tell you. She immediately ordered changes to their approach. Instead of trying to build conventional ships that could survive the trials, they would focus entirely on Daniel's fold transit technology. If they could skip the dangers instead of enduring them, the Voreth straps would become meaningless. The crew selection process began in month 4. Catherine had thousands of volunteers, but she could only take 30. She needed pilots who could react faster than thought, engineers who could fix anything with nothing, scientists who could analyze the unknown and adapt instantly. Lieutenant. Commander Maria Santos was her first choice for pilot. Maria was 34 years old and had flown everything from helicopters to experimental spacecraft. Her reflexes had been tested by military scientists who declared them beyond normal human capability. When Catherine offered her the position, Maria accepted without hesitation. Someone has to fly this crazy ship, she said with a grin. Might as well be me. Chief Engineer Patrick Dunn was more reluctant. He was 51, close to retirement, and had spent his career solving problems that other engineers called unsolvable. When Catherine approached him, he listened to the mission details with a skeptical expression. The gravitational forces near a neutron star would crush any ship we could build, he said. The radiation would cook the crew in seconds. The structural materials don't exist to survive those conditions. Then invent them, Catherine replied. Patrick stared at her. You're serious. Completely. He was silent for a long moment. Then he laughed, a deep sound that echoed through the meeting room. You know what? I've spent my whole life being told things were impossible. It's about time someone asked me to do the impossible instead of just talking about it. He joined the team that afternoon. By month 5, the first fold transit prototype was ready for testing. It was small, barely larger than a refrigerator, equipped with sensors and a simple mission. Fold to the edge of the null zone, transmit data, and return. The entire station gathered to watch. Scientists, engineers, pilots, administrators, maintenance workers, everyone found a screen and held their breath. Daniel Perry's hands trembled as he activated the device. The prototype vanished with a sound like reality tearing apart. 17 seconds passed, the longest 17 seconds of Daniel's life. Then the prototype reappeared, exactly where it had been. Its sensors full of data from a region of space that no human had ever visited. Cheers erupted throughout the station. People hugged strangers. Someone started crying with relief. Catherine Cole allowed herself a small smile, but Daniel was already studying the data. Already seeing the problems that needed to be fixed. Already thinking about the next step. They had proven that fold transit worked. Now they had to make it work on a ship large enough to carry a crew across the galaxy. The clock was ticking. They had 7 months left. The ship they built was called the Defiance. It was not beautiful. It was not elegant. It was a bulky vessel covered with sensors, weapons, experimental equipment that made it look like something assembled from spare parts. But it was strong, and it carried the hopes of an entire species within its reinforced hull. Admiral Catherine Cole insisted on commanding the mission herself. When the president called to argue against it, she listened politely and then refused. With respect, sir, I cannot ask people to risk their lives on a mission I wouldn't take myself. If we're going to do the impossible, I need to be there. The crew needs to see that their commander believes in them enough to die beside them. The president was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed. Bring them home, Admiral. Bring everyone home. I intend to, sir. The final crew numbered 30. Maria Santos would pilot the ship through dangers that no human had ever faced. Patrick Dunn would keep the Defiance running, no matter what tried to break it. Dr. Linda Hayes, a xenobiologist who had spent her career dreaming of alien life, would study whatever they encountered. And Daniel Perry, despite his protests that he was just a theorist who had never been to space, would maintain the fold transit system that was their only chance of success. I don't belong on this mission, Daniel told Catherine the night before launch. They stood on the observation deck, watching Earth turn slowly below them. I build things. I do math. I'm not a soldier or an explorer. Catherine turned to face him. Her expression was patient but firm. You invented the engine that will take us across the galaxy. If something goes wrong with it out there, you're the only person who can fix it. You're coming because you're essential, not because anyone thinks you're expendable. Daniel wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. He looked back at Earth, trying to memorize its colors and shapes. He might never see it again. I'm scared, he admitted quietly. Good, Catherine replied. Fear keeps you sharp. It's the people who aren't scared that make mistakes. She put a hand on his shoulder. We're all scared, Daniel. Every single person on this ship. But we're going anyway, because some things matter more than fear. The launch happened on month 9, day 3. Earth watched as the Defiance fired its conventional engines and rose from Prometheus Station. Millions of people around the world stopped what they were doing to watch. Some prayed. Some cried. Some simply held hands with the people they loved and hoped at a safe distance from Earth. Daniel activated the fold transit system for the first time. At full scale, space changed. There was no other way to describe it. The stars outside the viewports stretched into lines, then twisted into shapes that the human brain couldn't properly process. The ship seemed to exist in multiple places at once. Time lost meaning. Then it was over, and they were somewhere else. The null zone surrounded them. Through the viewports, the crew could see something that defied understanding. It was not darkness. It was not emptiness. It was absence. A place where space itself simply did not exist. Stars ended at a sharp boundary. placed by a nothingness that made the eyes water and the mind ache. Maria Santos gripped the flight controls. "I've seen a lot of things," she said softly. "This is the first time I've seen nothing. Real nothing." "Sensors confirm our position," Linda reported, her voice shaking slightly. "We're in the null zone, 47 light-years from the far edge." "Fold transit system is stable," Daniel added, checking his instruments obsessively. "We can make the next jump whenever you're ready." Catherine stood at the center of the bridge, looking out at the impossible void that surrounded them. Somewhere out there, alien civilizations were watching. They expected humanity to fail. They expected the null zone to swallow the Defiance just as it had swallowed so many ships before. "First trial complete," she said. "Set course for the Caldari system. We have a neutron star to visit." The journey required 12 separate folds, each one carefully calculated to avoid obstacles that even fold transit couldn't ignore. Black holes, dense star clusters, regions of unstable space that could tear a ship apart. Daniel worked constantly, barely sleeping, making adjustments to each fold based on what they learned from the previous one. After 6 days, they arrived at the Caldari system. The neutron star was worse than anything they had imagined. It was a ball of compressed matter only 12 miles across, but it contained more mass than Earth's sun. It spun hundreds of times per second, creating magnetic fields that could scramble electronics and radiation that could kill organic life in moments. The gravitational forces near its surface were strong enough to stretch atoms into ribbons. Patrick Dunn spent 3 days strengthening the Defiance's shields while they observed from a safe distance. He worked without rest, crawling through maintenance tunnels and rewiring systems that hadn't been designed for this kind of stress. When he finally emerged, his face told the whole story. "The retrieval point is inside the magnetosphere," he said. "Even with maximum shielding, we'd be destroyed in less than 10 seconds. The radiation alone would cook us. The gravity would tear the ship apart." "I'm sorry, Admiral. I don't see a way." Silence fell over the bridge. After everything they had accomplished, were they going to fail here? Maria Santos had been quiet during the discussion. Now she spoke up, her voice calm and certain. "We're not going to survive the environment," she said. "So we don't try to survive it. We avoid it entirely." Patrick frowned. "What do you mean?" "The fold transit system. We've been using it for long-range jumps. But what if we used it for short ones? Fold in, grab the fragment, fold out. Total exposure time of maybe 2 seconds. Daniel shook his head immediately. The calculations for a fold that precise would be incredibly complex. We'd have to account for the gravitational distortion, the magnetic interference, the rotation of the star, the movement of the fragment itself. One mistake, and we'd materialize inside the star or be torn apart by tidal forces. "How long would the calculations take?" Catherine asked. "Days, maybe a week. Then start calculating." "We didn't come this far to give up because something is difficult." Daniel wanted to argue. He wanted to explain all the ways this could go wrong. But he looked around the bridge at his crewmates. Maria, who trusted him to make her insane plan possible. Patrick, who had spent 3 days working himself to exhaustion trying to find another way. Linda, who had left her family behind to be part of this mission. Catherine, who had gambled everything on his theories. He nodded slowly. "I'll need help." "In coffee. A lot of coffee." The next 5 days were a blur of mathematics and simulations. Daniel worked with the ship's computer systems, running scenarios thousands of times, adjusting variables by fractions of percentages. Maria practiced the maneuver in virtual reality until she could execute it with her eyes closed. Patrick reinforced the retrieval arm with every scrap of material he could find. On the 6th day, they were ready. The Defiance moved into position. Every system was checked 3 times. Every crew member was secured in crash seats with radiation shields deployed. Daniel's hands hovered over the fold transit controls. "Maria," Catherine said, "you have 1 chance. Make it count." Maria took a deep breath. Initiating fold in 3, 2, 1. Space folded. The Defiance materialized inside the neutron star's magnetosphere, surrounded by radiation and gravity that should have destroyed them instantly. Maria moved with inhuman speed. Her hands flew across the controls, positioning the ship with precision measured in centimeters. Patrick's retrieval arm shot out, guided by sensors that were already starting to fail. The arm closed around a fragment of neutronium, a piece of compressed, stellar matter roughly the size of a baseball. "Got it," Patrick shouted. "Fold out now!" Catherine commanded. Daniel activated the return fold 1.7 seconds after they had arrived. The ship twisted through folded space and emerged back in normal reality, at 50,000 kilometers from the neutron star. Alarms were screaming. 3 crew members had minor radiation burns. 2 sensor arrays were completely fried, but they were alive, and in the reinforced cargo hold, secured by magnetic fields strong enough to restrain its impossible weight, sat a fragment of a neutron star. Catherine let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. "Second trial complete," she announced. "One more to go." Patrick laughed, a sound of pure relief and disbelief. "We actually did it. We actually took a piece of a bloody neutron star." Maria was grinning despite her exhaustion. "Piece of cake. Now we just have to fly to the center of the galaxy and tell a bunch of ancient aliens that they were wrong about us?" "Rest first," Catherine ordered. "Then we fly. We still have time, and I want everyone at their best for what comes next." The crew dispersed to their quarters, some to sleep, others to celebrate quietly with the friends they had made over months of shared danger. Daniel remained on the bridge, staring at the data from their impossible maneuver. They had done something that no species had done in 50,000 years. They had completed 2 of the 3 trials. But the hardest part was still ahead. The journey to the galactic core should have taken 40,000 years using conventional propulsion. Even with fold transit, it was the longest journey any human had ever attempted. The center of the galaxy was a crowded, dangerous place filled with ancient stars, deadly radiation, gravitational anomalies that could destroy a ship without warning. Perry plotted each fold with careful precision. One mistake could send them into the heart of a star or the crushing embrace of a black hole. He slept in 2-hour shifts, waking constantly to check calculations and make adjustments. The journey took them through regions of space that no human eyes had ever seen. They passed through nebulae, painted in colors that had no names, clouds of gas and dust that stretched across light years. They saw stars being born and stars dying. They witnessed the beauty and violence of the universe laid bare before them. They also encountered other species. The first contact came in their 3rd week of travel. A ship appeared on their sensors, shaped like a crystal flower with petals that rotated slowly around a central hub. It matched their course and speed, clearly wanting to communicate. Dr. Linda Hayes worked frantically with the translation software, trying to establish a connection. After hours of effort, a voice came through the speakers, distorted but understandable. "You are the humans." It was not a question. "We have heard stories. You crossed the null zone. You took a fragment from the Caldari star. Now you travel to Dominion Prime." "We are," Admiral Catherine Cole replied. "Who are you?" "We are the Crystalline. We travel the galaxy, observing, recording. We do not take sides in the affairs of the Council, but we wish to see you for ourselves. And what do you see?" There was a pause. "We see something new, something unexpected. The Voraith have ruled the Council for 100,000 years. They believe themselves superior to all other life. They designed the trials to prove it." Another pause. "You have proven them wrong. The galaxy is watching." The crystalline ship turned and vanished into the depths of space without another word. But the encounter affected the crew profoundly. They were not alone in their mission. Other species they had never met, were watching and hoping. The next encounter was less friendly. A Vorath patrol ship intercepted them 2 weeks from Dominion Prime. It was massive, 10 times the size of the Defiance, bristling with weapons that made their own armament look like toys. "Human vessel," the Vorath commander transmitted, "you have violated restricted space. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." Catherine stepped forward to the communications console. "Negative. We are exercising our rights under the trials of ascension. The rules specify that participants may not be interfered with during the completion of their tasks. The rules, the Vorith commander replied, are interpreted by the Council. We interpret them as we wish. Then you would violate your own laws in front of the entire galaxy? The crystalline told us others are watching. How many species would see the Voroth breaking their sacred rules to stop a primitive species they claim not to fear? The Vorith commander's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of anger or frustration. You speak boldly for such a small species. We have earned the right, Catherine replied. We crossed the null zone. We took a neutron star fragment. We are completing your trials by your own rules. The only question now is whether the Vorith have honor enough to keep their word. More silence. Then the Voroth ship moved aside, allowing the Defiance to pass. Continue your journey, humans, the commander transmitted. But know this. Completing the trials means nothing if the Council does not accept you. And the Council answers to the Vorith. The communication ended. Catherine let out a breath and felt her heart pounding. She had gambled that the Vorith's pride would not allow them to be seen as cheaters. It had worked, but only barely. That was insane, Maria said, from the pilot's seat. You just stared down an alien warship. I did what was necessary, Catherine replied. Keep flying. We're almost there. Dominion Prime appeared on their sensors 3 days later. It was unlike anything Daniel had imagined. The planet orbited the supermassive black hole at the galaxy's center. So close that time itself moved differently on its surface. The black hole's gravitational pull was held back by technology so advanced it seemed like magic. Structures of impossible architecture covered every inch of the planet's surface. Cities built over millions of years by species that had long since vanished. Ships filled the space around it. Thousands of vessels from hundreds of different species, all converging on the seat of galactic power. The Defiance was tiny among them, a minnow, swimming with whales. There it is, Linda whispered. The heart of galactic civilization. I never thought I would see it. We're being hailed, the communications officer reported. Multiple frequencies. They're asking us to identify ourselves. Tell them who we are, Catherine ordered. Tell them we're here to complete the trials of ascension. The response was immediate. A priority channel opened, carrying the voice of Ambassador Zethric himself, the same alien who had issued the challenge that started everything. Humans, Zethric said, his mandibles clicking with what might have been surprise. You actually came. You actually came, Catherine confirmed. The trials of ascension are complete. We crossed the null zone. We retrieved a fragment from the Keldar neutron star. And we stand before you now, as required by your own laws. Impossible, Zethric replied. No primitive species could accomplish this. You must have cheated. You must have received assistance from council members. Dr. Samuel Wright's voice came through the channel. He had been preparing for this moment for months, studying council law and procedures, learning everything he could about how to navigate alien bureaucracy. We broke no rules, he said calmly. The trials specified crossing the null zone, not how. They specified retrieving a neutronium fragment, not with what technology. They specified presenting ourselves to the council, not by what route. We developed our own methods. We used our own ingenuity. Humanity has fulfilled every requirement of the trials exactly as stated. The council will deliberate on this matter, Zethric said, his voice cold. The council has had 50,000 years to deliberate, Catherine replied. During that time, you have watched species after species try and fail. You have designed your trials to be impossible, and then pretended surprise when no one could complete them. That ends today. She stepped forward, even though Zethric could not see the gesture. Her voice carried across the channel, broadcast to every ship orbiting Dominion Prime. We are humans. Our world is a small blue planet in an unremarkable star system in an average arm of this galaxy. We have fought wars against each other. We have made terrible mistakes. We have struggled and suffered and sometimes failed. But we have never, in all our history, accepted that something was impossible just because someone told us it was. The bridge of the Defiance was completely silent. Every crew member was listening. You called us primitive. You said we didn't matter. You dared us to prove ourselves, confident that we would fail. Well, we didn't fail. We're here. We crossed your null zone. We took your neutron star fragment. We flew across the entire galaxy to stand before you and say that humanity is not to be dismissed. She paused, letting her words sink in. Now keep your promise. Grant us membership. Not because you want to, but because you must. Because your rules demand it. Because the entire galaxy is watching, and they will remember if the Voroth break their word. Silence stretched across the channel. Ships from dozens of species were listening. The Mendari, the Crystalline, and hundreds of others whose names humanity didn't know yet. All of them waiting to see what the Council would do. Finally, Zethric spoke. Come to the surface, he said, his voice flat and controlled. Present your evidence. The Council will decide. Channel closed. Catherine turned to her crew, her face calm despite the historic moment they had just witnessed. Now you heard him. We're going down there to finish what we started. Everyone get ready. We're about to make history. Rhea began plotting their descent trajectory. Patrick ran final system checks. Linda gathered the documentation they would need. Daniel stared at the planet below, trying to process that they had actually made it. They had flown across the galaxy and survived. Now they just had to convince ancient aliens that humanity deserved a seat at the table. After everything they had been through, it almost seemed easy. The council chamber was vast beyond human comprehension. Its ceiling stretched so high, the clouds actually formed near the top, drifting lazily in the artificial atmosphere. Thousands of delegates from hundreds of species filled tiered seating that curved around a central platform. Some were familiar shapes, roughly humanoid or animal-like. Others defied description. Beings of light and shadow and things that the human brain struggled to process. Admiral Catherine Cole led her delegation down a long walkway toward the platform. Samuel Wright walked beside her, clutching a datapad containing their evidence. Daniel Perry and Maria Santos followed, representing the crew that had made the journey possible. Behind them, holographic displays showed the Defiance in orbit. Proof that humans had truly traveled across the galaxy. The Vorath delegation waited on the platform. Ambassador Zethric stood at the center, his four eyes fixed on the approaching humans with barely concealed hatred. Around him, other council members watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to amusement to something that might have been hope. Delegates of the Galaxy Council. Catherine began, her voice amplified to fill the enormous chamber. Am Admiral Catherine Cole of Earth. I represent humanity. Species 7291 in your records. We come before you to claim the rights promised by the trials of Ascension. Zethric stepped forward. Before we proceed, the authenticity of your claims must be verified. You say you crossed the null zone. Prove it. Samuel activated the datapad, projecting holographic images above the platform. Sensor readings, navigation logs, and visual recordings from their journey through the null zone played for all to see. The alien delegates murmured among themselves as they watched the Defiance folding through the region where no ship had ever survived. These records could be fabricated, Zethric said. Any species with sufficient technology could create false evidence. Then examine our ship, Catherine replied calmly. Your scientists can scan every system, analyze every component. They will find residue from the null zone on our hull, radiation signatures that can only come from passing through that region. The evidence is irrefutable.Zethric's mandibles clicked in frustration. Very well, and the neutronium fragment? Daniel stepped forward, gesturing to a shielded container that two crew members had carried into the chamber. The fragment is here. We retrieved it from the surface of the Keldari neutron star using a precision fold maneuver that lasted less than 2 seconds. Again, your scientists can examine it. They will confirm its authenticity. A Vorath scientist approached the container and activated scanning equipment. The readings appeared on displays throughout the chamber. There was no doubt. The fragment was genuine neutronium, material that could only have come from the heart of a dead star. The murmuring among the delegates grew louder. Species that had been content to watch were now talking excitedly among themselves. The Mendari representative, Soft Current, moved forward from their delegation's position. "The humans speak truth," Soft Current announced. "I have communicated with them during their journey. They have completed the trials using technology of their own invention. They received no forbidden assistance." "The Mendari have no authority to make such declarations," Zethric snapped. "But we have authority to speak as witnesses," Soft Current replied, "and we are not alone." The crystalline delegate moved forward, their body chiming softly as they spoke. "We observed the human vessel during its journey. We can confirm their achievement. They crossed space using methods we have never seen before, methods that could change everything we know about travel through the galaxy." Other delegates began adding their voices. Species that had been silent were suddenly speaking up, supporting humanity's claim. Catherine realized that their journey had done more than complete the trials. It had given hope to every species that had ever been told they didn't matter. Zethric looked around the chamber, seeing support building from directions he had not expected. His voice rose in anger. "This is irrelevant. The trials are a formality. Junior membership in the council is meaningless. Humans will still be primitive. They will still be inferior. Their lifespans are too short, their technology too crude, their history too violent. Nothing changes simply because they completed a series of tasks." Catherine stepped forward to face him directly. She was small compared to the Vorath ambassador, barely reaching his chest, but something in her bearing made even Zethric hesitate. "You're right," she said quietly. "The trials don't change who we are. Our lifespans are short. Our history is bloody. We've made mistakes that haunt us. But you know what else we've done?" She turned to address the entire chamber, her voice rising. "We've survived. When our planet tried to kill us with ice ages and plagues and natural disasters, we survived. When we made war on each other with weapons that could destroy civilizations, we pulled back from the edge and survived. When we looked up at the stars and realized how small we were in this vast universe, we didn't despair. We built ships and went to explore." She pointed at Zethric, her fingers steady. "You gave us an impossible challenge, confident that we would fail. You expected us to give up, to accept our place as a primitive species not worthy of attention. Instead, we built new technology in less than a year. We crossed regions of space that have killed thousands of your ships. We took a fragment from a neutron star and flew across the entire galaxy to stand here before you." Her voice softened, but somehow became even more powerful. "That's who we are. We're not the smartest species in the galaxy. We're not the strongest or the oldest or the most advanced. But we don't give up. We don't surrender. When someone tells us something is impossible, we find a way to make it possible. When someone tells us to accept our limitations, we break through them. That's what makes us human." The chamber was completely silent. Even Zethric seemed uncertain how to respond. Finally, the eldest delegate spoke. It was a being that looked like living stone, ancient beyond measure. One of the founding species of the council. "In all my years," the Ancient One said, their voice like grinding mountains, "I have never heard a species speak thus. You do not beg for acceptance. You do not plead for mercy. You stand before us and declare your worth as if it were obvious. As if we should be honored by your presence rather than the reverse." Catherine met the ancient delegate's eyes without flinching. "We don't need your approval to know our worth. We know who we are. We know what we're capable of. We came here because the rules said we must, not because we needed your validation." The Ancient One made a sound that might have been laughter. "Remarkable. Absolutely remarkable." They turned to address the council. "I call for a vote. Junior membership for humanity. All in favor?" Lights began appearing throughout the chamber, delegates registering their support. The Mendari. The crystalline. Dozens of other species whose names Catherine didn't know. More and more lights, spreading like stars being born. Zethric watched in disbelief as the vote turned against him. "This is a mistake," he said. "You will regret this. Humans are dangerous. They will upset the balance of power. They will challenge everything we have built." "Perhaps," the ancient delegate replied. "Or perhaps they will remind us of what we once were. What we have forgotten in our ages of comfort and dominance." They turned to Catherine. The vote is clear. Humanity is granted junior membership in the Galaxy Council. Welcome, Admiral Cole. Your species has earned its place among the stars. Cheers erupted from somewhere in the chamber. Not just from the human delegation, but from other species as well. Catherine felt tears forming in her eyes, but she held them back. There would be time for emotion later. Right now, she had to be strong. Thank you, she said simply. We won't let you down. They returned to the Defiance as heroes, but Catherine knew the real work was just beginning. Junior membership was only the first step. Over the coming years, humanity would have to prove itself again and again. Building alliances, developing technology, earning respect through actions rather than words. The journey home took 3 months. When they arrived, Earth celebrated in ways that had never been seen before. Every city held festivals. Every nation declared holidays. The crew of the Defiance became the most famous humans in history. But Catherine didn't rest for long. There was too much to do. Daniel Perry returned to his research, now with resources beyond his wildest dreams. His full transit technology was shared with other species, breaking the monopoly on fast travel that had kept the old powers in control. Maria Santos led exploration missions to the edges of known space, always pushing further, always finding new wonders. Patrick Dunn trained a new generation of engineers who believed that impossible was just a word used by people who had stopped trying, and Dr. Samuel Wright became humanity's first permanent ambassador to the Council. His patient diplomacy slowly earning respect from species that had once looked down on them. 20 years after the dare that had been meant to humiliate them, humans sat on the Council as full members. 50 years after that, a human was elected to lead it. Her name was Alina Perry, Daniel's granddaughter. She was young for the position, but she had inherited her grandfather's brilliance and her species' stubborn refusal to accept limitations. In her inauguration speech, she quoted words that had been spoken long ago. In a chamber at the heart of the galaxy, we don't need your approval to know our worth. We know who we are. We know what we're capable of. The galaxy had dared humanity to prove itself. Humanity had responded, and it was only the beginning of what they would achieve. Somewhere, in a retirement home on Earth, Catherine Cole watched the inauguration on a screen. She was old now, her hair white and her body frail. But her eyes still held the same fire they had held when she faced down Zethric all those years ago. We did it, she whispered to herself. We actually did it. She smiled, closed her eyes, and remembered the day humanity had answered the galaxy's dare. The day everything had changed. The day they had proven that humans, for all their faults and flaws, could achieve anything if they refused to give up. It was, she thought, a good legacy to leave behind.